and then have this discussion. Right, you should, it's 7:02, you discuss this.
You
Yes,
can't
Rich,
vote here,
thank you.
Mitch. We're having a good time.
Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Ulysses Town Board. It is September 13th, 2022. And we are opening the meeting at 7:03 p.m. Krista, would you mind calling the roll?
Sure. Mr. Boggs.
Present?
Ms. Olson.
Present.
Ms. Marino.
Present.
Ms. Bouchard. Present. And Mr. Goldman is here via Zoom.
I'm here but not present. All right.
Thank you.
He's a talking head.
He's a talking head right now. The only alteration to the agenda is that the under upcoming events 10B is at September 27th, not September 22nd. That was a typo on my part. Were there any other alterations or additions or removals from the agenda presented? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and we are pleased to be joined tonight by Andy Zepp from the Finger Lake Land Trust. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
Great, well, thanks for having me. I'm just gonna pass out a copy of our newsletter. And this highlights some of what I'll be talking about. And it's been a while since I've been with the town board. And I really just wanted to update you all on what the Land Trust is up to. And hoping to do, both in the town of Ulysses and regionally. And tell us particularly what types of land we're focused on. And for starters, we're really pleased this past year. We had a great year. We protected more than 2,300 acres. Most notably, we closed on Bell Station across the lake, which was a heavy lift and secured more than 3,400 feet of shoreline. That project is still very much in process because we, by design, are an interim owner. We are going to subdivide the property into 2 parcels, sell the shoreline to the state by prior agreement. It will be a state wildlife area. And then we're exploring putting solar on a portion of the property. Still a lot of questions about that. But as that proceeds, we've also been supportive of efforts with Camp Barton, particularly early on, helping the scouts with different scenarios of achieving their financial goals. You may know more than me, but my latest reports from Parks is that's progressing along in the appraisal stage and still looking positive as that moves forward. But more locally in the town of Ulysses, we're focused on several resource areas and have been for a long time. During this past year, we completed a 200-acre conservation easement outside of the town of Hector, but in the Tagana Creek watershed. So that is a focus area, particularly large properties with actual frontage on the creek. In that case, the Land Trust doesn't own the land. The donor, it was given to us essentially a set of conservation restrictions, and we become the watchdog. So in this case, when it's sold, it can be farmed, it can have limited residential development, but it requires buffers, vegetative buffers in sensitive areas, and it must be sold as a farm, as a unit. It can't be subdivided. Our responsibility is to monitor and ensure compliance, and if there's a violation, if necessary, stand up for that in court. I should mention that the Land Trust serves portions of 12 counties and more than 200 municipalities. An increasing role for us is working with other nonprofits and municipalities and using these tools, because we currently have legal interest in 28,000 acres. There is absolutely no way we could directly steward all the land that needs to be conserved. So for example, the town of Ithaca, the town of Canandaigua, they are now holding conservation easements in some cases, acquiring parkland. So we're increasingly working with others to use the tool. So Tagana Creek is a focus. We do believe easements are the right approach in this case, where it's looking at watershed protection. If we were seeking to provide public access, we would more likely be pursuing acquisition, whether by the land trust to keep it, or a partner, whether the municipality or state parks. Another area in the community we've been working is the Black Diamond Corridor, where we assisted state parks a number of years ago in acquiring the missing link in the town of Ithaca. At one point, they own the entire corridor except for 80 feet, kind of in the neighborhood of the Glenwood Pines. Along with that, there were 70 acres acquired. That's now all state parks. We also more recently bought 10 acres at the intersection of Glenwood Heights Road and Route 89. It's also then we stepped in, we can move more quickly. So we bought it, land was on the market, sat on it for about 2 years, sold it to parks when they had the money. We've developed a revolving fund to enable projects like that. And the purpose was to buffer the Black Diamond, because that is going to be a very attractive area for development. And right now, a lot of the qualities of that experience, if you're in everyone's backyard, will be quite different. And the other thing is, Parks is looking for just administrative access points. They have some limits and they desire, and also maybe some associated facilities. So we've also, a lot of what we do is reach out to landowners, try not to scare them or annoy them, but to get them thinking about a conversation to see if their financial goals can be met along with some kind of conservation objective. Typically, this can go on involving multiple generations of the family. It could last decades, but then the goal is that they feel comfortable talking to us when they're thinking of the fact that they actually are mortal and are going to die, or they're moving to Charlotte or Florida or what have you, and to have some time to work out conservation, maybe of a part of the property, full property. In the Black Diamond, again, this focus, easements are on a great tool, stays on the tax roll. If they can be purchased or donated. If it's donated, there are tax incentives at the federal and state level that are attractive. And again, it's a flexible tool that can accommodate more uses such as agriculture, forestry, and achieve the goal of, in this case, buffering the Black Diamond. Two other types of projects I want to mention. One is farmland protection. We work on this in a regional basis, primarily for competing for state grants to fund the purchase of agricultural conservation easements that are specifically designed to sustain agriculture over multiple generations. Frequently, these are $1 million or more projects, and it's very labor intensive. It typically involves farmers who are either looking to pass the land to the next generation, perhaps expand their operation where they use the proceeds to acquire land that they're renting or facilitate generational transfer. We're right now working in the town of Canandaigua, Yates County, over near Penn, Skaneateles, and doing some work in the county, in Tompkins County. Tompkins County used to hold these. Tompkins County actually does hold several of these agreements. The county was doing acquisition of them, but the planning department realizes this is not the role they wanted to play. So we've been active in the past, and they're looking at being active again because the county is stepping back from it. It's also an area where there are opportunities for easement donations, and frankly, ones that may be of interest to the town that we simply are not in a position, to take on the perpetual stewardship. So there's a potential partnership there if the town has an interest in creating such a program, has the ability through, for example, code enforcement officer to ensure a sustainable commitment to the follow-up for these agreements. But a good example would be there could be a 40 to 50 acre piece of farmland that's very productive. It is a scenic valued part of the town. And that simply, if we look at serving 250 communities, which we're responsible for, we can't take on every 50 acres like that. So instead, doing this work with other communities inside Canandaigua, Ithaca, that currently have more capacity, but there is a way to get, and we're happy to work on it. The last thing I want to mention is kind of a new area for us the last few years. Given the concerns about toxic algae, we have recognized that fact and the fact that most lake associations, of which there are 11, typically have one staff person, so they have limited capacity. And there's a tremendous need to address the issue of nutrient loading and runoff. I imagine you familiar with some of the points Rebecca Schneider has made, road ditch runoff. We're very concerned about that, and we're starting to get involved in what I call plumbing projects. So, for example, in Seneca County, up Route 89, we have a conservation area that has 2,000 feet of lake frontage called the Van Riper Conservation Area. It also has a small stream that was highly altered by construction of Route 89, and it was eroding downward, putting tons and tons each year of soil and nutrients into the lake. So we worked with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service there on a fairly intensive restoration project that so far looks good. It was done within the past 6 months, but the question will be next year's spring floods. And really what it was taking an incised trench, or if you think of Route 89 as a big dam, and there's one culvert shooting way more water than there was historically, it was just eroding this downward. And what they've done is to dissipate that energy using natural materials like logs and rocks, put the sinuosity back in and change the grade, which is fairly complicated, but it looks like it's working. And it's projects like that, restoring wetlands, putting in buffers of vegetation between farmland and creeks, and in the future, maybe even detention basins, and not taking it on all for us in perpetuity, but trying to be a catalyst to make these things happen, which we need not one or two, we need lots of. So that's something too, where we're very interested if folks can nominate sites where they're supportive landowners, because the big question is, where's that magic spot where there's an owner who's sympathetic, whether that's private land or public land, who owns the right spot in terms of the hydrology, the place you can deal with the liability of a major storm event, and then the engineering of putting these things. And it's kind of a magic matching of these 4 different variables. So that's something too, we're eager to pursue these, and there is funding at both the county and state level. So there's funding there for the projects, and both we and the county are very interested in trying to identify where we can do this. So that's just a bit of an overview of what we're up to, and I'm just wanted to provide an opportunity to answer any questions, whether it's about what the land trust is focused on or the use of any of these tools like the conservation easement.
On the
And-
projects, sorry, go ahead, Rich.
Andy, you and I talked, you talked about some municipalities who were actually creating funds to help purchase small properties, or can you talk about that?
Sure. There's some communities, including the town of Ithaca. The town of Ithaca has that has been just budgeted over the years. I think they just put it in the budget, and they built it up and used that to buy parkland on West Hill. One of their goals was to use it as match money for the state conservation easement program to purchase conservation easements on farmland, but they haven't had takers. So instead, they bought a lot of parkland, particularly on West Hill. So town of Ithaca is one. Town of Canandaigua is using a similar approach. And I should mention, the state of New York has passed enabling legislation for what's called the Community Preservation Act. And it is essentially a transfer tax, so that it allows a community, if it's passed by a referendum of the community, if you have an open space plan, and then the town has the referendum, it allows you to put in place a transfer tax. So if you're planning to live the rest of your life here, it doesn't affect you. It's only on sales above I think it's the median. So it's not a tax on affordable housing, it's only higher end. And that goes into a fund for acquiring parks and conservation easement. It's particularly been very effective on Long Island, where you have tremendous inflows. Like think of the Hamptons, millions and millions of dollars that have been used through this program. It's kind of crept up the Hudson Valley. And I think this year there are 2 new towns. There has been a move to do statewide enabling legislation, but the builders and realtor, any tax on the new thing, that's kind of not gone nowhere. So there are these kind of pay-as-you-go opportunities. Sometimes some towns have done bond issues, like up near the Rochester suburbs have done bonds, again, after they have a plan. But then there's this, in some ways, an easy mechanism, if there's support for it, is this community preservation. And I'd be happy to provide more information on that. I think the key, though, is having a plan that is aspirational but realistic. In the case of Ulysses, where you have a lot of farmland, also, I encourage you to think in 2 tiers. If you're lucky, maybe you keep lots of farmland. But realistically, if some of this is not going to happen, and that goes out of farming and is going to become, say, low density residential, how would you want that designed? So it's kind of tricky because you have no guarantees of which scenario and where, but by starting to look at both of those and kind of identifying intermediate goals so that it's not all or nothing on the last big farms. But there are opportunities, there are people who are charitable. We work with other people, the Village of Freeville, for example. There's a town conservation area that was donated there. We were involved with the town of Dryden. There's actually a lot of support for this. And if there is interest in the town parks, we're constrained simply on that. We can't be absentee owner or steward of all this stuff. So we really do welcome partnership with the towns.
Did we still have in our budget? I thought Nancy put something in, a small amount of money.
I think there's $10,000 in there.
Is it?
Yeah. That was in there as a fund for like buffers or something.
Right,
Or yeah, we started, so we should look at maybe adding to that fund.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a reserve or a designated.
Designated reserve.
It's not an expense line.
No.
Yeah.
And there are 2 things I want to mention that can be very valuable, small amounts of money. If you apply for any state grant, if you have any cash that shows skin in the game, that gets you more points. So even a modest amount of cash could put you ahead of another community that doesn't do that. And then secondly, there are costs associated with any conservation, even if it's donated. So for example, if land-rich, cash-poor landowner, which there are many, came to the land trust and said, we want to donate the development rights, we want to donate a conservation easement. And we said, well, that's terrific. That means there's probably at least $20,000 of costs there. And some people can do that, and sometimes we can fundraise, but frequently there's a gap. And what that is for is that for every conservation easement, there is usually a fairly significant survey cost because we survey not just the perimeter, but interior zones to differentiate, say, where the house is. So there's a generous area where you don't have to worry about the land trust. You've got a surveyed area where it's you can do whatever you want pretty much. The farm area, we say an environmental protection zone. So there's a pretty healthy survey cost. Then there's what's called a baseline documentation report to have a biologist go and put together this report to document the conditions of the land, both for the IRS, if a tax deduction is taken, but for our record. So if 40 years from now, someone violates this agreement, we can say, well, here's the way it was. And that's a standardized document. So that's a cost. And then the most significant, though, is we have a endowment for monitoring and defense of these agreement, and actually buy a specialized insurance policy for litigation that we put away about $15,000 per easement. Because otherwise, if we collect these, or for that matter, a municipality, and don't have the resources to back it up, they're just pieces of paper. In one violation that's not addressed could erode public confidence in a case law limits.
So I just had one question, which is, well, more than one, but I'll just say one for now. It seems like having an open space plan is kind of an important or valuable thing, like when you're applying for these things or trying to get money to, at least the one that example you use, but in general.
Absolutely. And then in the meantime, though, because that to be done well is a pretty lengthy process.
Yeah.
So a key thing we recognize is conservation easements are inherently confusing. And it takes a long time for someone to wrap their head around you think of a power line easement, a driveway easement, so people think, I don't want the public on my land. So it's like, no, this doesn't involve it. And then the next thing is, well, I don't want forever walk, why are easements on forever walk? So there's all these things to get through. And myself or others from the land trust, we're staff from the land trust. Your average older landowner really does not want their first thing from a kind of a sales person. And so one role the town can really play is simply connecting us with who in these areas like the Black Diamond Corridor or Tagana Creek. Is there a likelihood of the fit? Because we're not really trying to sell, we're trying to match goals of family that cares about the land, maybe doesn't need to max out the development potential. And in many cases, I call it an insurance policy, because if you think of a property with, say it's 35 irregular acres with 2,000 feet of frontage on Tagana Creek and a nice house. Well, putting an easement on it, sure, you could squeeze 2 more houses if you wanted to. But if it's a nice house in that property, they may get almost or just about the same by selling to someone moving and goes, boy, that's a gorgeous house, I want to live there. But what the easement does is make sure that the next owner, who's a guy who loves power tools and is bored, doesn't just muck the whole place up, which we see happening. Some stuff is based on economics, others just idle hands sometimes doing some really regretful things to them. So I strongly endorse and would be happy to provide what support we can with an open space planning process, but also to the extent you can just help connect us to who we should be talking to, because with the disappearance of land phone lines, it's really hard. We mail to people, we have no idea if we can open the letter. So we don't have people's cell phone numbers. And it's challenging this connection.
Do you do educational? I would imagine you probably do, would do like tailored educational sessions, because I could imagine at some point being able to identify people in our town who may be interested in the audience. Just as not like I'm ready to just necessarily
Yeah.
jump into an easement, but that might be something I'd like to keep an open mind about. So I think a lack of education in so many things is
Yeah.
it's often a key driver of how decisions are made. And so do you tailor?
Absolutely.
Okay,
We do that all the time.
okay.
And try to just do it in ways where we're talking more than 25 and 10,
Mhm.
because
Oh, yeah.
we do a lot of this, and you need more than one, because again, it's not kind of, the tools aren't intuitive.
Mhm.
So absolutely, we're happy to do that.
That's good to know for the future, but I had the open space plan I was unaware of that being a plan type, so
Yeah.
that's great. It's great information.
Yeah, I think that could be particularly useful, the sort of developing education for the farmland protection options that you're talking about here. Because I think it's confusing, and it would be great for people with farmland to understand what they might be able to do and what the constraints are and aren't and all too, so.
And the important thing with the open space plan and the timing is to kind of get a read from the community to make sure there's comfort on how that plan will be used or not relative to zoning discussions. Because, for example, if you went to Caroline, right, and said, oh, let's do an open space. plan,"
I don't think
not
I'd
the
be as
best-
receptive right
best
now.
time. So I mean, that just has to be, it's a common understanding of what the plan is for and what it's not.
Excellent. Well, we're about to enter into our comprehensive plan process. I think that this building in some questions related to this and gathering information and feedback early is very useful to set us up for success. We already knew we were going to end up with an updated ag plan afterwards, but this is fantastic.
We're happy to help and do what we can as a resource. And we work with all the state agencies, the DEC, the Ag and Markets, Parks, Department of State. So to the extent we can, we're happy to help them.
Awesome. Well, while you're here, I'd like to do a shout out and thank you. We ended up not needing you, I don't think, at Land Trust for helping us secure Camp Barton, which is obviously in process, but the fact that you were willing to was very much a feather in our, not even a feather in our cap, but just like, it was clear that it was shoved in the right direction. So thank you for being an advocate for us.
Well, thanks, and making it not necessary for us to be the change of time. And we're very happy. And actually, we're now working on another camp on Seneca Lake
Wonderful,
that we hope to secure.
excellent, excellent. Well, it'd be nice if there were many more as a result of these initiatives. So, thank you.
Well, thanks. And again, anytime, we're just down the road in Ithaca, so
Awesome.
happy to come out. and help.
I really appreciate coming on tonight. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Andy.
for organizing it. Excellent, wonderful. Our next presentation, we have Dwayne with us from Insero, who did our single federal audit. And we have Blixie is with us and Michelle as well.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for a few minutes to review the results of the audit with you. I want to start by thanking Blixie and Michelle, as well as everybody at the town for all of their help. We have gotten almost to the finish line. There's a couple of loose ends that we're just going to be tying up here in the next couple of days. You have in front of you, I believe they were sent to you late last week, final drafts. The numbers aren't going to change. There's just a couple of documents that we're looking for to kind of close up the file. What I wanted to do this evening is just kind of walk through each of those documents, let you know what they are, hit a couple of the highlights for you from a financial standpoint, and then open it up to questions. So you have from us 3 different documents. There is the financial report itself, which is the big thick one, quite lengthy. And then there are a couple of letters off to the side. There is what we call a management comment letter. We use the comment letter if there are what I'll say smaller, less significant findings. We would present those to you in the comment letter so that you're aware of them. And I'm really happy to report that we didn't have anything in the comment letter. So we didn't have any findings that needed to be presented there. So that's certainly good news. You also have a communication letter from us. Auditing standards require that we communicate certain aspects of the audit at the conclusion. We don't have to do it in writing, but it's easier to do it that way. So, so you have that communication letter from us. That letter is pretty much all boilerplate language. There's nothing in there that I'd be too concerned about. The letter tells you that for 2020, there were no changes in accounting standards. We always look at estimates. There's always estimates inherent in financial statements. We look at the estimates as well as the underlying assumptions, and we didn't have any concerns with those. We reviewed the disclosures, the footnotes to the financial statements for clarity, for consistency, and we didn't have any concerns there either. No disagreements, no difficulties in conducting the audit. So nothing to be too concerned about in that communication letter. And so the main thing that you have is the financial report. If you're not somebody who is adept at reading and understanding financial statements on a regular basis, and you don't want to read through the entire document, I can't say that I blame you, but if nothing else, I would encourage you to read through the management's discussion and analysis that is part of that financial report. That part of the document begins on page 4, continues through page 4I. That section of the document is really written with a lot of layman's terms. You know, there is not a lot of detail there. It's very top level information, but there are some charts and some graphs that I think are helpful in getting kind of an understanding of the town's financial picture. And it's a very nice readable format. It gives you a little bit of an understanding of the town's overall financial position. It gives you a little bit of information about the funds. And then it has information in there about capital assets, about debt. And then at the end of that management's discussion and analysis, there is kind of a looking forward section, information about, you know, significant events that are upcoming, so that you have kind of a basis for where some of the significant changes are going to be coming from. The town-wide financial statements are the next couple of pages right after that management's discussion and analysis. Governmental accounting is done with presentation in two different formats. There is the fund basis presentation, which you're probably more used to seeing on a regular basis because each fund is its own column. You see revenues and expenditures for each of the funds. But then in the annual financial statements, there's also this government-wide presentation where all the funds are combined into one column. And then included in that government-wide presentation are the long-term assets and liabilities, things like capital assets, including infrastructure, net of accumulated depreciation, and then the town's debt, as well as actuarially calculated liabilities for pension obligations and for post-retirement benefits, typically retiree health insurance. So all of the town's assets and liabilities are reported in that government-wide format. In that government-wide format, the town has net position of about $4.5 million at the end of 2021. And net position grew by about $500,000 during the year. Okay, beginning on page 7 of that financial report is the fund basis presentations. The balance sheet with all the funds is on page 7. The statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance is on page 9. There are a bunch of pages of notes to the financial statements. Those begin on page 11, go a lot longer than I would like, but they continue through to page 37. They include some of the significant disclosures. There are several pages of disclosures about the town's share of the statewide pension obligation, as well as a few pages regarding the town's actuarially calculated obligation for retiree health insurance. And then towards the back of the financial report, pages 38 and 39 are an additional report on internal control and compliance. This is required under government auditing standards. And that report identifies no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and no non-compliance with laws and regulations. That report is actually on page 50 and 51. I skipped a whole section. Beginning on page 38 are several pages of budgetary comparison schedules. Those give you an indication of the town's compliance with its modified budget. So those schedules show the original budget, the modified budget after any changes that the town has made, and then actual activity in a column for the variance. So those take up several pages. There are also some schedules there related to the pensions and retiree health. And then that government auditing standards report is on page 50 and 51. And then because the town spent more than $750,000 in federal expenditures during 2021, you're required to have an additional audit under the uniform guidance. It used to be called the single audit. Everybody still calls it the single audit, but officially it's the audit under the uniform guidance. And so that includes another report on internal control and compliance. That report begins on page 52, continues through to page 54. That report is specific to the federal programs, and that one also identified no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and no non-compliance. The schedule of expenditures of federal awards is page 55. That just shows you the total that was spent in the town's federal program a total of about $810,000 was spent in the highway planning and construction program. And then the last couple of pages of the financial report, there's a page of notes, and then the very last page is a schedule of findings and question costs, and that just kind of summarizes the results of all the audits. So once we get these last couple things tied down, we'll be submitting this report as well as it's called a data collection form. That all gets submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, which is an agency of, I think it's still an agency of the Census Department. They're in the process of moving it to Office of Management and Budget, but they haven't got that quite done yet. So, but that's all going to be done in the next couple of weeks. It's due by the end of September, so we'll be well in advance of that last couple of weeks deadline. So with that, I'd be happy to open it up to any questions that anybody might have.
Dwayne, I just wanted to clarify, I know that one of the reasons that was still that we're still seeing it in draft form on our side is because you were waiting on a letter
Yes.
from our previous attorney.
Right.
There's expectation, basically, he had to verify, and he sent it and sent that he was our attorney last year. Is that correct? Something along those lines?
That's correct. Yep.
So
Yep.
there-
And
there's
it,
no anticipation of material changes to the report based on that, I would imagine.
Correct. yeah, we're not expecting anything in addition or any changes. We just want to make sure from a documentation standpoint that we have everything before we do our final sign-offs.
So from your perspective, if we accepted the report tonight, you're
Mhm.
not, like you said, you're not anticipating any alterations to it based on the evidence. You're just getting the final piece of the paperwork.
That's correct.
documentary. Okay, thank you.
That's correct. Yep.
And anybody with,
So, my time here with all the audits you've done for us, Michelle had built this asset database. Did that play
Yes.
into this anywhere?
It does. So the government-wide presentation, that presentation on page 5 and 6, does include all of the capital assets net of depreciation. So if you look at page 5, let me scroll there quick. So the total capital assets total about $3,350,000 net of depreciation. And so that's the results of that overall asset database that Michelle had been working on and doing so well getting put together. There's one other place that I'll point out where there's a little bit more detail. Note 4 to the financial statements, which is page 23 of that bound packet, has a nice chart that shows all of the capital asset activity of the town during the year. So you see the beginning balance, all of the activity, the ending balance, and then the depreciation.
That's on what page?
Page 23.
And so this is updated every year?
Yes, correct. Yep.
So Dwayne, you said something like we grew our assets $500,000 or something.
Correct. Right.
But how did we do that? Because in our budget, we didn't have $500,000 like we were going to have a surplus.
Mhm. So the fund balances in total across all the funds grew by about $450,000. And then there are on page 10 of the financial report, there is a page that shows the differences in presentation between that fund basis reporting and the government-wide reporting. The most significant differences there, things like debt payments that are recorded as expenditures in the funds. When you look at that government-wide presentation, they're not expenses. their reduction of the liabilities, so they get added back. And then there are also adjustments for the way that those pension obligations are accounted for, and those retiree health insurance obligations are accounted for. So, but you know, the fund balance growth of 450,000 is really not all that different from the government-wide growth of 550,000.
Okay. I mean, isn't that surprising? Or is it normal?
No, it's not surprising. It is, I think, when you consider the overall financial picture, what we're seeing in the market, if you will, or a lot of the towns that we're working with, especially because of all the additional federal funds that are coming in.
Right.
A lot of towns that we're working with are seeing fairly significant growth in their fund balance and in their net position.
Right, so that would include the ARPA funds? Was that partly why it was so, no?
It wouldn't, because those funds, since they weren't spent, since they weren't designated anywhere, they are showing up as deferred revenue in the funds. So there's $160,000 roughly in the general fund recorded as unearned revenues. And so as that money gets allocated and spent, that revenue will be earned and it'll get recorded as revenue at that point.
Got it. It just seems to me we're building a lot of assets.
Mhm.
I think we need to talk about as a board what we do with those assets, because the budget is one thing we're working on, and it seems like we kind of scrunch in the budget. But on the other side, we have all this buildup of assets in the fund balances, and the two should meet somewhere in somehow.
Mhm.
I mean, that's for us, Dorian. I don't think that's, yeah. I mean, that's for us to decide.
Right.
But you're pointing to something that I think we need to consider as a board.
Mhm. Right. And you know, if you look at if you look at the budgetary comparison schedules, I think that gives you an indication that while as you were saying, while the budget is fairly tight, the actual activity for the most part turned out better than the budget.
Right.
Because you're right, when you consider how the budget looks, you know, you're not expecting a lot of growth in your fund balances, but because in a lot of cases revenues came in better than budgeted and expenditures were less than budgeted, you end up with growth in your fund balance.
Right. All right. Yeah. And last year, I think, because sales tax was way more than we expected,
Mhm.
and we had vacancies of staff for quite a long time, probably reduced expenses, so that created this large increase.
Sure, right, yep.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question about the assets, the capital
Mhm.
assets? So the infrastructure looks like it's our town's biggest asset by a fair amount. And is that roads and what is that? Because it's not buildings or anything, so culverts.
It
and
is,
roads and
it
things
is
that-
roads and bridges primarily.
Is our public water system included in that?
It is, yes.
Okay. And so the condition of the roads is evaluated somehow each year to put a valuation on that, like how do you do that?
Right. So it's not valued in terms of how good the road is, not that way. Basically what's done is some historical estimates are developed to get kind of the beginning numbers, you know, by looking at how many miles road does the town own and operate and maintain. And then looking at the average age for those roads, using some of those historical estimates to create kind of beginning base numbers. You know, since 20, 30 years ago, these things weren't accounted for the way they are now. Going forward, as there are additions to roads and bridges, improvements, renovations to those capital assets, those monies that are spent are added to the value. And then all of those capital assets are depreciated over their estimated useful life. So over a period of years, the value for those infrastructure assets is reduced.
So each year it kind of gets reduced based on that formula. Okay, that's really helpful.
Yep.
Thank you.
Right. Yep. So in 2021, there was roughly $172,000 in additions to infrastructure, new assets, new spending. And then there was roughly $120,000 in calculated depreciation, the loss of value, you know, over time.
Great. Does anybody have any additional questions for Dwayne or Blixie or Michelle, who are both on? It's going to be, I just want to prep the board for accepting the audit report is under new business. So with the understanding that while it says draft, there's no material changes.
Right.
It's just final.
Correct.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Tonight. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Blixie, for all
Thanks,
the time.
everybody.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. It's really clear and helpful.
Great. Glad to do it.
See you next year then?
Yep.
We're doing an
We do an
annual
audit every year now.
We're moving towards an annual audit, yeah.
Wow, we didn't used to do that.
Nope,
Yeah, this one was required because of the bridge.
yeah,
Mhm.
but the board discussed, when this was basically gonna be the most expensive one, just because they were getting all up to speed with all of our stuff, because they haven't done an annual audit for us in a while. And then we're going to be moving towards
Yeah,
doing this on an
Then
annual
we're trying
basis.
to do it at a supervisor change.
Right.
So
Well, we used to do like, oh, I'm sorry, like smaller one. There's different classes of audits, right? And then we do these big full ones whenever there was a supervisorship. Yeah,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
there's
there's like a
smaller thing
management
that you can do.
review
Yeah,
kind of
okay,
thing.
right,
Less than an audit. They
Right.
don't do certain tests that they don't do,
right.
but, but it's actually cheaper if we get an audit every year,
Right.
because then they can produce, actually, we would get like comparative statements,
Mhm.
which would be helpful to look at, because then you look at the figures from the previous year. And, but they can't produce those if they didn't do an audit last year, because they can't vouch for those numbers.
I'm just asking from a historical
Yeah.
remembrance perspective, it was hard to get
Mhm.
some past boards to want to do an audit every year.
No, we already
And
got
so-
on
Wanna do
audit
it
board.
From the get-go.
No, they didn't want to do it at all.
Never.
I was being
No
one.
nice. And so it evolved to these big audits and then the smaller audits, because that was acceptable, but this makes much more sense and we actually advocated for that, so that's great.
And it's actually cheaper.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
win all the way around.
It is, it's
Yeah, a
great.
lot of information.
Yeah,
And it's-
exactly.
Thank you
yeah.
for having the vote.
It's,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
Make it easier to read.
it's super helpful and that was a very good explanation we got. And we always get clear ones from Blixie and
Not
Michelle
yet.
also, so
Yeah, that's coming up.
it's a good team, financial team we have.
Okay.
I'm
Well, thank
gonna say goodnight then. Thanks, guys.
Good night,
you.
everybody. I'm taking off too. Take care.
Okay, so, we can move on to, I'm so sorry, I actually jumped over privilege of the floor and that my eagerness for presentation. I apologize, that was inadvertent. Is there anybody, who's not a chair or liaison who wishes to address us on Any subject, you may have 3 minutes. We have nobody in person, but if there's somebody online who would like to speak to it, we'd be happy to hear you. Linda is shaking her head no, as she is the only member of the public currently with us online. So maybe we'll see you later, Linda. There is a second privilege of the floor later in the agenda, so I will not skip that one, I promise. So then we can move on to liaison chair reports. I see our legislator is here.
Hi, everybody.
Diane.
So first off, I'll just start with the Community Recovery Fund that the applications are live that the counties, so that's the county grants that we're providing to the community. That's $6.5 million. So you can go on to the Tompkins County website and look at the application materials. We'll be taking applications from municipalities, nonprofit organizations, veteran organizations, and businesses through the 31st of October. And we're going to have informational sessions you can sign up for. So you do need to sign up ahead of time. There's one tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. There's another one on the 28th at noon. So please go onto our website and sign up for those. The code administration study will be is advancing. It's advancing through committees and through our planning department. And so this is something we talked about probably over a year ago, but we're just we had other priorities with COVID and stuff and looking at broadband. So this got put on the back burner a little bit. So you've probably heard a little bit about this, but what this is we're hiring a firm to look at local municipalities and their code officials, code departments to see if there's any efficiencies that can either be provided together or from the county, if we can do anything, to help with IT, administration, training, backup for folks, any model building codes that looks like that we can do. So anyway, that's what that study is going to be about. So that'll be coming up soon. We also hired a firm to look at broadband, and that's finally coming up actually, I think it might have just gone live or it's going to go live soon. We have a survey that's for the public, and we'll be you'll probably be getting some press releases about that so that people can actually go and do a test for their internet to see how fast it is. Where, who does their internet come from? And so what we're learning so far is about 1,400 people is our best estimate are not served in the county, and others are underserved, which means it's not at a good enough rate to go into a Zoom meeting, or multiple people to go into a Zoom meeting, or work, or attend educational things at home. So we'll be looking at that. And if you hear of anybody that doesn't have service, you can refer them to that. And again, we'll be sending that out. And then we're going to have that company look at how do we fill in those pockets. It's not just a survey, it's to actually help us figure out how to do that, whether it's through grants or other ways, but how to make sure as many people are served as possible. Redistricting, we're in the final stages of the county legislative redistricting. And so what that is so for instance, the area that I currently represent, District 5 is going to be renamed. I can't remember if that's going to be number 16, I think it is. But anyway, we're looking at, instead of 14 legislators, our redistricting commission came back with recommending 16 legislators. This district will be not different in the town of Ulysses, but this district encompasses part of Enfield, and it used to encompass part of the town of Ithaca. they're taking out the town of Ithaca part and expanding a little bit into the town of Enfield, going slightly over Route 79, which had been the border of this district before. And I won't go into other areas, but you can, again, look at our website or let me know if you want more information on that. And let's see what else. Sales tax. Do you want the sales tax update?
Yeah,
Okay. We were actually, these are the numbers for June, and we were actually down quite a bit for some reason, and we're not sure why. That from last June, it was down 14% overall. Municipalities on average were down 29.77%. So that was quite a dip. And again, we don't know why. Still overall for the year, the county is still up 9.95% from last year to date. And municipalities overall are still up 3.75% year to date. But that's something to look at. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, budget. We're really thick into budget season right now at the county. Let's see, we have a budget forum on 9/27 that I believe is going to be at 7 o'clock, although it's not on our schedule yet on the county website. So that's a forum for people to give input. There's also going to be another time for input, which is the public hearing, which is November 7th. That one is scheduled for 7 p.m. But of course, you can come to any legislative meetings. You can't come to the budget meetings, and we don't have public speaking at the budget meetings, but you can come to any legislative meetings, or of course, send us information or give me a call on what you think. Some of the things I'll mention is we're investing some money into reimagining public safety. And a lot of times people think of it as reducing the amount of people you have working in public safety. And we're doing the opposite of that. We are hiring more sheriff's deputies. We, at least is what we have in our tentative budget, because we feel that getting more people out on the street consistently to handle little things and to be out closer to the community, that we're going to make people safer. And also hiring some mental health workers and people to, we actually already had this, and it was already approved, some money to have people attend, go out and for things that we wouldn't consider a high risk for the staff. So it could be, a traffic accident, or someone's reporting some stolen property. So different staff to go out that you don't need an armed officer or to go out and to attend to that. Let me just look. And we just approved the $24,535 to pay Ulysses the final amount for the cost for the Cemetery Road Bridge. So I hope we're all square when you get that payment. And that's all. Oh, we're going to, I think I already said this maybe last month, but we're going to demolish the old dental building downtown, which is on one of our properties. But I could give you more detail if you want. So that's all I have.
thanks, Ann.
And I just had a quick question about COVID testing. Is the county still funding? I know the COVID testing still happening up the mall. Is the plan to keep doing that, or what's the future thought on that?
So we haven't talked about that specifically about what you said about going forward. One thing that was information that we did get recently was that for the services that we do get reimbursed for testing is going from 100% to 90% from the federal government. So that's something we'll be taking a look at over the next couple of months.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you so much for a thorough report. We appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ann.
Okay, we're moving on to, old business video conferencing remote meeting policy. This is timely because there's no extension of the open meetings remote attendance. So we have a copy. Nate, could you jump in on this conversation for us, please? You're here. I did print off, and the reason I printed off these copies, which the public has been provided with also, is that, which is very red, they wanted people to see what had been in parts and changed and things like that, so there was, it's very transparent, but it does make for complicated scanning. So Nate, can you explain quickly briefly why we are in a position where we've already passed the local law that allows us to set our policies, so that's done, and now we're just replacing
Nate, come put that mute.
to replace the policies that we established or reestablished last fall, and this would replace that and replace section 4.5. Nope, we can't hear you, Nate. You're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
I think my microphone was on mute. So briefly, of course, with the end of the governor's continuing extension of the emergency orders, we are no longer able to operate under the state emergency declaration. And so really it's incumbent upon the board to authorize some sort of whatever you authorize, a video conferencing policy. Rich's attendance tonight, I think, Rich, not to pick on you, but is a good example of the reason for authorizing a video conferencing policy. And then the revisions from the prior draft that we sent you, I tried to shorten and simplify it as much as I possibly could to make it clearer just when, based on the board's feedback, what the extraordinary circumstances were, the non-extraordinary circumstances, and the things that applied to both of them. I tried to be less duplicative and a little more streamlined. So it's a little bit shorter. And I know, Roxanne, you'd sent an email asking some questions. Caitlin, I think, answered those correctly with her responses to you. And so, if anyone has more specific things that they'd like to ask right now, happy to go over them as best we can.
I do still have a question.
Mhm.
It's just a clarification on the wording. I understand what Caitlin's answers, which were very helpful, but so for under D policy, so number 1 is the extraordinary circumstances. That makes perfect sense to me. So number 2, members of the body is the non-extraordinary circumstances, right? All other circumstances. So the wording of that one says that the members are permitted to attend and participate using video conferencing from remote locations in all other circumstances. And then it says, if those locations are open to in-person physical attendance by the public. And so I'm just wondering if that wording could be something more like, if there is one or more advertised location where the public may attend, like the wording above it, because to me, if you read that really literally, those locations, those remote locations have to be places where the public can attend. And that isn't really.
Well, in non-extraordinary circumstances, so I'm going to say ordinary circumstances, the public should be able to attend it.
Where the remote locations where the people are?
Correct. Yeah. This was always one of the issues with prior, before COVID, the remote attendance, that the personal physical location that a member was attending from had to be open to the public. Now, that being said, there are Committee on Open Government decisions, or opinions rather, that say attendance from places like an airport lounge is okay because it's open to the public for attendance, but you would need to include in the notice of the public meeting that the person attending from that location know where they are actually attending. And that the public has a right to attend there.
The public is like the larger public, not the town, the public that the person represents or is
The
acting on
town,
behalf
town
of.
members.
It's
Residents.
It's the larger public.
Correct. It is the broad public, you know, the Committee on
Okay.
Open Government's opinions do also say, you know, somebody attending from a place, I think it really was the example of like somebody in Florida attending remotely, you know, is that open to the public? It's like, yes, it is, you know, and the idea is that it is open to the public, and it really should be. Like, I want to be very clear with all the board members. If you are attending under extraordinary circumstances remotely, then you need to make sure that you are willing and able to have people come into whatever physical location you are at. You know, you should not be excluding people from those locations. So Rich, not to pick on you, but
No.
it
Yeah.
appears you're attending from your home.
Yeah.
And
In an extraordinary circumstance.
He has an
in an
extraordinary-
extraordinary circumstance. Exactly.
So
and
then
it-
you don't have to have
Then you
people
don't have-
access.
No.
Correct.
exactly.
Okay, so I mean, I'm not trying to be a pain at all. I just wanted to make really sure. I don't know if you want to, I mean, I guess the Committee for Open Government opinions change, and so maybe we don't put it in there, but to me, people could misinterpret if a person's in Florida or if a person's in an airport and say, you know, they are participating this way and a controversial decision is made or something. It's, you know,
I
It's
will
not
I
clear
will
that-
tell you.
those
I-
public people, you know, people in the town could not access where those people are. And so that was my concern, was making sure that we're covered okay on that. And if we wanted to further cite something that lets people understand that better. I don't know.
Let me be really clear, right? This is a very gray area currently. And
Mhm.
I will strongly discourage you, the zoning board and the planning board from making any decisions if it hinges on the attendance of somebody remotely. I will say, let's adjourn it, push it off to another meeting when somebody can actually be physically in person to make that vote. I don't want to be a test case on this. You know, it
Okay.
like,
Nate, I
tonight.
have a,
That was my concern, really, is
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying, so.
But if you
but
have,
Nate, what, I don't understand the rationale. You've got a town hall. 4 members of the town hall are sitting in the town hall. I'm 3 miles away in an extraordinary circumstance. Well, let's say it wasn't extraordinary. Why isn't the physical presence of the town hall enough, as if the 5th person was there anyway? Why do you need the extra location with 1 board member?
You need to take that question up with the state, because they're basically saying in-person physical attendance under non-extraordinary circumstances is the expectation of the public. And so if you're going to attend from
It's an absolute,
Yes.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
If you're attending from a remote location, the public needs to be able to also physically attend that location under non-extraordinary.
I understand that, but that's still absurd in my, I don't get it.
Larger public, though, not your
No, what-
public.
What do you mean the
representative.
large, I don't, Nate, Roxanne, what do you talk, larger, what do you mean larger public?
Well, it's not just the people of Ulysses. You could have somebody from the town of Ithaca or the state of California
Yeah.
show up.
No, or
Yes.
I'm talking about the way this is written for the non-extraordinary circumstances now. And Nate's example that you could be if you were in an airport, it might not be considered an extraordinary circumstance, a non-extraordinary circumstance. Or if you're a planning board member who's in Florida for 3 months, that's a non-extraordinary circumstance, but you're in Florida. And so, yes, the public can attend, but your public cannot attend. And so
Who's your
I-
public? What's that distinction, Roxanne?
She, I think, is referencing just citizens or residents of the town of Ulysses. And, you
Yeah.
know, I'm
People
gonna
that
say,
represented
Roxanne,
would-
I hear what you're saying.
Okay,
And
that's my one.
and Rich, I hear what you're saying. This is a odd area of the
Mhm.
state law. We're dealing with the statutes as written and as interpreted. The extraordinary circumstances distinction has been just so recent that we just do not have opinions in case law exactly as to how this will be applied. And so therefore, you know, this is a resolution policy, right?
Right.
Mhm.
You will be amending this in the future as we have cases and opinions from the Committee on Open Government telling us, here's how to apply it. Like this is a living, breathing document that hopefully we will not be a test case for, that we will be working with, being realistic about, recognizing that it needs to give and take as things go on. And so, you know, I just want to be real clear about that.
And so just one further follow-up question on the non-extraordinary circumstances, the extraordinary circumstances, the way it's written, it all makes perfect sense. It seems to me that for the non-extraordinary circumstances, there does not have to be a quorum, say in the town hall or in any one physical place. These people could all be in different places and it's a quorum. Is that
Correct.
right?
Correct. And when I was there in August, you know, I think you'd asked a very similar question and I was like, oh, I don't remember. So I had a chance to just look back at it again and think about it longer, which is also a benefit of having the opportunity to think about things. So
Yeah.
the idea is a quorum is appropriate when the public can attend. And in in ordinary circumstances, the public can attend every single location. And so therefore, the member attending from the multiple locations, you know, it's appropriate for them to count towards the quorum. And
But we
the,
don't limit, oh, sorry, go ahead.
well,
We don't
the,
limit the number of people who can be off-site. They can all be off-site, like, and
they're
it's.
at
That's what he's saying. He just
correct.
said,
Yeah, the public can attend in every single location. If you all wanted to attend from 5 different buildings, you could do that. Every single place would be advertised as a location from which the public can attend. And I mean, this is an absurd situation. This is a policy. If the board would like to affirmatively
just-
state that that a quorum of town board members must be physically present at the town hall or other regular meeting location, I'm okay with that.
I would like that.
why?
Because I think I mean, you're right, it's kind of an absurd playing out of it, but in a non-extraordinary circumstance, you could have somebody in Florida and somebody in an
Well, you
airport,
could.
and somebody
So
in
what?
California,
That's
and
what
we're having a
Ulysses-
meeting and the public of Ulysses cannot go to any of those places.
Well, that they
It really
could.
doesn't meet the letter of the intent. It's not likely to happen, but that's the way that it's worded.
Well-
There doesn't have to be a physical quorum anywhere. But there does have to be a physical quorum for an extraordinary circumstance.
That's required by
But
state law.
ordinary, More,
That's by state law,
but why doesn't an ordinary make it less
because
restrictive?
because to his point, because the addresses are published, either the individuals, the public could attend at all 5 of those locations, or all 4 of those locations, or all 3 of those locations, depending on how many or not. I mean, so.
Okay,
So if you're in your car,
But they
that's not
can't-
really a location.
No.
Yeah.
right.
You can't attend from your car in ordinary circumstances. You could in extraordinary circumstances. And an extraordinary circumstance could be, you know, that you couldn't, right, we could have some extraordinary circumstances where you got held over, your doctor's appointment ran late, something like that. Though someone could attend on their way into town
Right.
hall.
Yeah, I'm just bothered by the facts that you could have a meeting where everybody is somewhere where nobody from the town could possibly access them. But that's fine.
We would cancel the meeting.
I know, but I'm just saying it's a policy and it's the way it's written. And so, but whatever it is, I can move on. I just wanted to voice my
Let's move on.
concern with that. Because I think it's really weird and there's no need to have a quorum in one place at all. So I don't agree with that, but we can move on.
So we have a resolution, to adopt the policies, because the law has already been, they mentioned the law has already been adopted itself, that's giving us the right to adopt said policies. And this will replace, the current section 4.5 of rules and procedures for meetings of the town board. And this is to otherwise apply to meetings of public bodies of the town of Ulysses. We did pass a resolution a few months ago that specified which committees don't have to comply with open meetings because they're purely advisory. So this would refer to those committees and boards that do have to comply with open meetings, primarily BZA and planning board.
Did you just move that?
I'll move this. Is there a second? Any further discussion? Then Rich can't vote, but those members present here, all in favor? Aye.
I'm abstaining because I think there should be a quorum for the non-extraordinary circumstances. I'm not against this policy, but I'm against that part of it. So I'm abstaining, but it still passes, so.
Okay. Well, it passes then. So Rich, you're welcome to now rejoin us in the meeting
Okay.
as a voting member because our policy now allow you only because it's extraordinary circumstances. So, okay, thank you.
Well, you see, in that case, the fact that Rich was not here didn't make any difference in the vote. It would have passed anyway.
Right.
So it's only when you have close votes that you probably want to withhold, not have.
Right, if it's gonna break a vote or if they
Yeah.
make a vote to have somebody who's remote, then it sounds like we would.
That's why I mentioned if there's anything that hinges on a person who's attending remotely, hold it over. I don't want you to be a test case.
But Nate, that goes to Roxanne's point. If you're saying that, you should put the quorum in.
Right, because you could be any.
Wait a minute, Roxanne, I'm arguing your point. Let me argue.
No,
it
I
for you.
know. I'm
Well,
saying
then
that.
be quiet for a second.
For one of the three of us that just voted yes.
Rich, I will acknowledge what you're saying,
Well, couldn't-
but also hear my legal advice.
Yeah. Your legal advice is don't take a vote. But if the case is that everyone can be remote,
Rich,
then-
I will then argue the legal affirmative point. The law is very clear. We're allowed to attend by non-extraordinary circumstances through remote video conferencing as long as we publish the
Okay.
advertised public accessible location. And
Okay.
that is a very valid point. And now taking off that, I'm telling
Right.
you, why would you invite that?
Yeah.
I agree with you. But putting in the quorum for the non-extraordinary would make sure that doesn't happen because you'd have a quorum at the table.
It wouldn't prevent it from
It's
happening.
because-
though, but Quorum might not all vote as a single unit. And so. you
Well,
could have
that's true
present
too.
and one person remote.
That's true
And-
too. But if there were 5 people remotely meeting, Nate would say, don't never have a vote during that kind of meeting. Right,
And-
Nate?
And what
You're
would
right.
probably happen, Rich, is that the board members would just do as they would do, regardless of legal advice. And then I would defend you.
Right, I know you would defend
And
those,
there's lots
but
of-
it's
lots
not,
So let me say this really more even clearly as possible. I think what the board has just adopted as a policy is legal. It is lawful. It is supported by every opinion and case that I've reviewed.
okay.
My point was actually not, whether it would hinge on someone who was remote, that if you had to have a quorum, even in non-extraordinary in one location, then that would allow it would seem less to the public, like, oh, you're just doing it from wherever. You'd have to be able to go to one place because the quorum of people had to be there. And the same as the extraordinary, I just thought it was better for the public and seemed less like you could have people all over the place. No person from your town could possibly go and experience it, and you're still having a meeting and passing, adopting policies. That was my point, less than one person, the quorum would guarantee that someone's vote wasn't more heavily weighed. But anyway, we voted and we can move on.
Well, we did do that for 2 years. And that's how we conducted for 2 years under. And people.
That's right,
knew
we did.
And we got the business of the community done. So I have less long-term anxiety over that, provided it's accessible remotely, but. Let's move on, because we can always come back to it. These are our policies,
Right.
so.
Okay, all right, move.
So, thank you, Nate. So we're gonna, do an update, and Roxanne, you did share an email earlier.
Right, yeah. So I
on the
didn't,
comprehensive plan
yeah,
update.
I didn't realize I hadn't sent it out, but anyway, I emailed it and then I printed these hard copies to Kate. It's just notes from a meeting that Caitlin and I had. And then to talk about this, as the board had said, we agreed to do at the last meeting to keep this moving along. And then I also added like suggestions on what the committee would do, some of the potential charges of the committee, which came out of that previous discussions that we'd had on the DEC proposal notes and the timeline and all that. Anyway, the bottom line is, the summary was that Caitlin and I had just, and it was, it wasn't a super long conversation, but we thought we'd bring it to the board. We're suggesting maybe up to 9 voting members, because it's likely that as the project progresses, members need to drop off, and we'd like to be left with a solid committee that's 5 to 7 people if we could through completion, 5 anyway. And so we outlined, and Caitlin, please correct me if I got this
I
wrong.
didn't think you did when I reviewed it. It looked
Okay.
accurate to me.
1 member of the planning board, 1 member of the BZA, 1 member from the CSAC, 1 member particularly from the local business community, 1 to 2 members from the, the breadth of Ulysses ag community, one if member, if we reform an ag committee, and we don't have to have all 9 of these people to start out with, and looking for breadth across, agricultural interests and activities and businesses. And 2 to 3 community members who have a strong interest in participating, and think they can do so through the project. And, looking for some breadth of representation in different areas of the town. And I just put some examples there. And then liaisons, 1 or 2 board members, depending on what board members feel like they have time for and want to do. We had thought about maybe a village comprehensive plan zoning update committee liaison, or village board liaison, and then if anybody has ideas for other liaisons. And we're still continuing to have the ad in the the announcements in the newsletter. And we have 1 person who sent in an application. It's kind of general, and she's very interested in environmental things overall, potentially CSAC, potentially the Habitat Committee, this committee.
Roxanne, one thing I thought of since we spoke that had come up previously is having a youth representative or somebody, getting a youth perspective, I think. Doesn't have to be someone.
Oh,
from
right.
18, but we did.
Yeah,
talk
I
about
think
having-
maybe that was like a more of a liaison thing
Maybe.
than an act, than some, because it's harder for them to commit. But yeah, I think I forgot about that, I'm sorry, but maybe.
No, we didn't talk about it at that meeting. We talked about previously, but I.
Maybe
thought
we
that-
did, yeah, but that might be sort of a youth might be more of a liaison thing, because it might not even stay the same person if you're getting someone from the school or something like that, so. So, yeah, so that's, I mean, I don't know, if the board, what's the next step? We say we're gonna keep going forward, we can start looking to assign people or ask people, or, once we have, a structure that the board agrees on, I guess, is maybe the way we're trying to progress forward with this, getting this committee. So I know, thoughts?
I think it'd be useful based on what our incoming planner, when he was doing the interview process, we were talking about is coming up with an outreach plan. Our DEI policy actually requires us to do outreach, and I think, because I think the email, the listserv is a great place to start. I think tailoring, if we can like kind of confirm the list of what kinds of community members we're hoping to attract, what kinds of perspectives we're hoping to attract. I think, and the more targeted specified, start doing some more targeted specified outreach, for instance, to ag people that we've identified as as not necessarily as resources, but to get it through those listservs, because we know there are listservs getting that information out there. I think, if we're looking for a youth liaison, we're gonna want to reach out to, I think we're gonna have to do some more active. I think we have a very good start, it's not a criticism by any stretch. I think we just need to come up with a more substantive outreach plan for how we can actually connect with some of the audiences who might not just be reading our newsletter. Can't imagine anybody would want to read our newsletter, but there are at least a couple people in this we might want to grab.
Well, I mean, so like for the business community, we can send it to the chamber.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but if we could decide on the structure and you want to have this structure, then we can get some of these other groups to be looking at, like, well, who do you want to have from your group as a representative? And we can work on these other things, sending them out. I mean, otherwise we're never going to get anywhere. So we need to keep going. And so, I mean, we can take what I wrote about the comprehensive plan and tweak it a little and send it to the chamber for the business community, and I don't know, whatever the listservs or the mailings are for the
Yeah, and I think
ag
that
community.
it would be helpful to have, this is what we are planning to do.
Yeah,
Do you want to be
Right.
part of this?
yeah. So we kind of have that, but I can work on something else if you want. That's a little more
So where's the planner? I don't see the planner.
right up. Well, the charge of the committee is that this committee will be working with the town planner and then the planning consultant and regular input from the town board to do these things, to make the
Yeah, so if you're gonna
basically
put a-
work on the comprehensive plan, sort of like the zoning update steering committee did.
Right,
The planner will be working
yeah, so if you
with
put
this
this out,
group.
you're gonna say that it would be led by the planner.
Well, or maybe not exactly led, but I mean, the planner would be helping. I mean, the planner's gonna have a lot to do for a while. And so
Well, somebody
this
has
can't
to
be
lead
their
them,
whole thing,
because this
right?
could be like herding cats.
Well, you would
It's
make
like-
probably make a chairperson from that committee. And then, to help like organize the meetings and stuff, so the planner
Right.
didn't have to do all of that.
Yeah, but it has to be somebody who knows where they're going. I mean,
Right, yeah. And then eventually we'll have a planning consultant that will do it too. That will be helping. I mean, that's how it was with the last comprehensive plan. The last comprehensive plan, we did not have a planner. The town didn't have a planner.
okay.
So it was a
but we had a
committee
consultant
that had a
cover it.
chair. And then after a while, we got a consultant. And then the consultant worked further with the committee. So this will be much more efficient because we have a planner and everything. So I mean, that's my sort of vision of it based on past experience.
Yeah, as long as there's a strong leader within this group. Somebody that can move them.
Well,
along.
the planner will help do that too. Like, we'll make goals and we'll figure out what kind of data and everything is needed, and then, where that we get it from, like, and that's where, a planning consultant really helps if the planner doesn't have a lot of time for that, because depending on what else they have to do in the town,
Michael,
Which
I
is
agree with you.
a lot for a while.
I agree with you. I think that whoever chairs it is gonna have to also be seen as collaborative
Right.
and not
Not a
necessarily,
bulldog, but
not a bulldog, but also not pushing not
Yeah,
pushing a
pushing-
single agenda too,
Right.
because I'm just thinking about previous history and wanting to, charter a very inclusive process. So I
Absolutely,
very
yeah.
much hear what you're
yeah,
saying
it's
about
really
having,
tough. Yeah,
it's a really tough, that's gonna be a really tough job.
Right.
so that's exactly where I'm going with. this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the last comprehensive plan was like that. There wasn't anybody with some particular agenda on it at all. It worked. It just worked. I know sometimes it doesn't work, but we'll have a planner, which is a great thing that we didn't have last time. So we're really
Yeah.
way up on it.
So what's the next step then? I mean, it's-
Well, I think if the board is comfortable with the structure, I would like to have. I actually, somebody reached out to me this week with, ideas for things that the committee could be charged with, so I would like to. I'd like to, I think that it doesn't slow us down to, for the next meeting, look at exactly what we'd be charging the committee with doing. In a substantive way. But I don't think that precludes us from going and finding members, because I think that's just becoming, when we do it, we adopt a resolution, we're gonna wanna refine that language. So I would propose that for our next meeting, we actually hunker down on the charges of the committee, but that does not preclude us from going to start, start a more active recruitment with the voting members. Does that make sense?
So I can take sort of what I wrote and.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that these are sort of pretty general things that they would be doing that I sort of outlined here, and we could just use the most general aspects of that to give people some idea of what they would be doing and
Right.
how many meetings, how long this might last. And
Right,
what
I mean,
number of meetings and all. 'Cause
As general
people
information. I
wanna
think
know
that's
that.
great. I think it's also though very important for our public education information as that goes out to explain, be very, and in our resolutions, when we establish, when we actually have not had a resolution to establish this committee, but when we do that, I think we should be very clear about the intention of what that committee, what we're asking the committee to do, because there's not going to be, under this proposal, there's not a town board member voting on it. So that's really, we're setting them loose. There's gonna be liaisons, but you're not gonna have, the board's not gonna have a vote. So we really want to make sure that we've structured it in a way that the town is actually, that the board is getting what we want out of the process.
The board has the whole vote. And nobody else really has a vote at all.
But one of the complaints with Zusk was, right, that Zusk came up with a plan that the town board didn't buy into, because we talked about this and for any number of reasons. And I don't want volunteers to walk away feeling like they were set up for failure, or they were set up to not be successful because we didn't set them up in a structure that was actually reflective of what we want. So I just want to be.
Well, I
very
mean, you could have a
deliberative.
board member vote instead of just be a liaison in if you wanted, but the idea is to get a broad committee.
Well, I think that part of the problem was that the town board was brought in too late on the process. So I think this time, there needs to be some reporting early on in terms of direction, and that the town board kind of is going along with it rather than waiting till there's a whole blown up thing and then the board doesn't like it. I don't think that works as a process.
Right, well, I mean, in the sort of generality of what I wrote, I said that they would meet regularly once a month, with more or less, depending on the stage of the project, working with the town planner and a planning consultant, and with regular input from the town board, so back and forth. So I fully agree that that is really key. So, yeah, so, I mean, at some point we need to make a decision, make a vote on it. So maybe that's at the next meeting, we're gonna vote on forming a committee, the sort of structure of the committee, and
Well,
the charge of the committee, which we will discuss further from this outline. And Caitlin, if you wanted to send the ideas you've got beyond that,
Yeah,
that
I
we
will-
can
I
add
will
into
forward
it.
them. I got them
Yeah.
by email yesterday, so it was really kind of too late. So
Sure, yeah,
I'm sorry, I got them today. So I will
there you
forward them
go,
to
it's even later. Yeah, so I can combine them in with this, and then maybe we can have that discussion and an actual vote on it next time. Cause
sure. I mean,
the time is going by here,
yeah. We're in the end of September.
right? And so in order to, yeah, we can, as you say, start, I mean, if the board agrees on this structure roughly anyway, we can start, we can write up, I can modify the description I made and send it to you. You can see what you think of it, and then we can use that as a little blurb to send out and talk to particular people about, including the plan, send it to the planning board, this is what we're doing, this is
Mhm.
what we need, you have somebody, so.
Forwarding
Okay.
everybody the feedback I got today, so I'm gonna send that out. Just send it out to you.
On this.
Well, no, it's not actually, because this wasn't available to look at, so she wasn't, the
Right.
feedback wasn't on this. it was
Yeah,
just
I
on
didn't put
broadly.
it in, yeah,
Yeah, so no, there's,
Yes, great start. I think.
right, but I think it would be good to get going. to
well, I
keep
happen to
doing it.
know our new
with-
planner is currently driving cross country to it.
Cool.
So,
So it looks like they'll be joining us the end of September.
yeah, the idea was the 27th, the 26th.
Taking the scenic route. or-
No, I mean, it's a long, to get settled, like they're literally traveling now and then next week getting actually set up in their household and then start on the following Monday.
Hopefully it's enjoying the journey.
I certainly
Seeing
hope
something
so.
along the way.
Either way, I'm
That's the way to do
delighted. It's in
Long and very-
en route. It is a long drive. Excellent, wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciated you meeting with it, or you meeting with me, I should say.
Yeah,
Okay,
well, this is all stuff that's stuff that will be included in the comprehensive plan for sure, the water, the energy, I mean, I don't know that we have to write out all that detail, the sustainability elements, that's affordable housing, that's all stuff that we have in the proposal that we wrote, so, yeah. yeah.
okay. Well, let's move on. We can do we already did our audit presentation and some discussion. So the resolution under new business is to accept the 2021 audit report.
I will make that motion.
Second.
Any further comment or discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And then another rather routine matter of business, the 2023 snow and ice agreement with Tompkins County. Nate did review it for us and did not have any legal concerns. Did anybody else have any concerns or
Move.
Second.
any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Had reports, I've got a few updates. We've been doing, kind of a soft rollout of the board, the town is in the process of going through a transition on both domain. It's soon to be the domain of the website as well as our email addresses, moving to the .gov that we talked about a few months ago. We're beginning the soft transition right now with emails. So ideal, like the way that we're gradually transitioning is because all of our emails are with one exception, are forwarded through an external web source. So I use Gmail, for instance. The new email has been included into the forwarding. And so the idea is we're actually test running it before we debut it to the public, because we don't want to be in this position where emails are getting dropped. And we have discovered some glitches in that process. So we are working on that right now to figure out the source of what those glitches are. Right now, we don't know the source, but we do know there's a problem, which is at least a step in the direction of knowing you need to do something.
Can I ask a question about the
Sure.
emails? So by what you just said, do you mean that, so now it's a .gov, but it's still not a server that we have, it's just, it's a pass through the way the Ulysses.ny New York is, and you're still forwarding it to another account, your Gmail or whatever.
So temporarily, yes. The long term, this is kind of an interim phase where we're still going to be forwarding through Gmail. The problem with forwarding through Gmail, which is what the town has been doing.
Yeah, is that someone could
Forever.
foil all your Gmail.
Right, well, yes, and depending on if you're going through. it
Yeah,
through your
I think
personal.
it's a big issue.
But the other big issue is that for records management, Carissa doesn't have the access she needs. And we need, from an administrative standpoint, we need to have administrative control over emails. So right now, yes, we're still using basically a third party transition. But what this is, one of the things that we've outlined in the phase 1 of the IT upgrade is to actually migrate the town to, internally, to, sorry, what are we migrating to? The, Microsoft 360, right? 365. The other.
360.
Thank you. And we're moving in the direction now also that because of the way the emails are set up, Carissa can actually internally, we'll be able to, currently with the new .gov ones we have, internally go in and pull those emails and actually control access. So for instance, if we have an employee who is working for the town in this position, certain position, and that position is terminated or that person resigns, right? Carissa can actually go right into our system and actually control everything and lock it down, change passwords, change usernames, like whatever. We're gonna have administrative control for the first time ever.
So it's not gonna bounce to like a Gmail account.
So the plan is that it's not going to be bouncing to a Gmail account after we fully made the transition. We're in that literally soft, like, okay, what are all the email addresses? And then we're gonna be moving to, so it's not that
Okay,
way.
because that was just my concern, that I didn't think in the long run, since we're making these IT changes, it was a good idea to continue bouncing to someone else's personal email, because there's so much else in your personal email. And if town email is foilable, it seems complex to sort it out potentially. And so that's good. That's
So,
gonna change that way.
I believe in theory, though, someone could choose to have their email, they could choose to forward themselves a copy of the emails to their personal account. So for instance, I have that with our business. So I get a copy of my actual personal email because I'm not constantly, it's the same thing that you do. I'm checking into a specific server.
Mhm.
And I don't on my phone want to check into a specific server. It's not user friendly for that. So I actually forward a copy, but that wouldn't preclude, getting a copy someplace else would not preclude the administrative records control.
Right, there's one place
Right.
where if it's foiled, it is there. It's
Yeah.
not like somewhere.
This
in your-
nebulous approach,
Yeah, right,
right?
okay, that's good. I was
Yes.
concerned about
We're
that.
moving on to like,
Okay.
little government with bigger power
Right.
over our own records because
Right.
it's just, it doesn't work.
No, I think that's important and good.
Any idea of the timeline for that? Or-
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get everything done before Carissa goes on vacation, and Carissa's leaving on vacation for 4th, right? 4th
of October.
4th of October. So we're trying to make the full transition, but this is kind of the little blip that we found, that you guys found courtesy of my
I still
email.
don't understand that, but
I-
anyway.
We don't either, we don't either. So we're trying to track down the cause of that
Yeah.
right now. And so that's kind of probably there's gonna be some little delay just because we had 3 hours of budget meetings this morning and 3
Yeah.
hours on Thursday.
Yeah, no, it was the only one of everything. Now everything's coming through again. I don't know, it was one.
Well, you
set
didn't
of-
get my one earlier today though either, because I did. a
You're
test
right,
one.
I didn't,
Yeah,
yeah.
so, it seems like our accounts do not like each
So
other. but-
Caitlin,
Yes,
do we have to do anything?
we are going to,
So-
personally do not need to do anything. We are gonna be working we're working with everybody individually, and we will be able to walk you directly through.
Okay.
Michelle and I recorded a video last week. It is very easy for those of us in Gmail to make this transition. She's setting up for Roxanne specifically, because she does it differently, is handling Roxanne directly. So you'll see, in probably later this week, you're gonna get an email. We've been working with staff right now to test run it.
Okay,
And,
good.
but you're not missing anything in the interim.
That's what I'm
So-
not, no.
Yeah, you're not missing anything, I promise. There's
Yeah,
nothing.
that's
So
good.
we're
All right.
basically been working quarterly, and then we're gonna hit the board members.
Alright.
What is she gonna differently from me though? Because you don't have enough, I mean, mine is going to a different server now.
Basically, you're just
So-
getting you login, I think, to GoDaddy, which is what we're using. So you're just gonna be able to check your email the same way you currently check it with, and I don't know how you currently check it, but I know you go
Right.
to a specific.
It's just instead of a pass through on that
Right.
server, it's the server.
And
It's
she's
on
gonna
that
connect you
server.
to, I think she's doing the same thing. For,
For difference, because we
Yes.
won't be able to at all
He's gonna.
after some date.
Yes,
Is that right?
we're
'Cause I need to
requesting
know
everything
that.
forwarded.
Okay, okay.
So, but we're not ready for him to do anything.
Okay, yeah, well,
so-
do let me know, because I'm using it straight off of
Oh, yeah,
that.
yeah.
Because I didn't want to bounce it to my
Yeah.
Gmail, which is why I didn't do that. Okay.
Yeah, no, we won't, we're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
gonna do.
Well, I just started to wonder because there was this new address. I was like, oh dear, is this gonna go away?
No, no.
Thank you. That's
Nothing's
good.
going away right now.
And the one other thing I'll say is that in this office, so in the Ulysses Library, when I was on the board there, Renee, that they completely transitioned to that. And Renee Carver was the one who did it all. So he might be a great resource to chat with about it and, helping people to understand how it worked and all. It took a while.
I
but-
am wondering though, if there is a backup for your email. What if we need to go in and get something?
My understanding was that it from him was that it was on that server, but I mean, I can also forward it all somewhere. I can find out. I'll find out like what, I mean, it's on my computer now, so it doesn't, once it's downloaded, I don't think it goes away. So I have it, but maybe I can send it all somewhere else. We should find that out for sure. Once this is all made. Yeah, so just keep me in the loop. Okay.
Okay, thank you for my awkward IT. I'm not an IT person.
No, me neither, but I do know that one.
So, okay, so, stay tuned for more, kind of on a completely shifting gears, on a continuation of the EMS conversation, EMS fund conversation we had this morning. There's been some chatter among the chief electeds of the municipalities that participate with EMS about, doing a joint letter, to the city of Ithaca, requesting improved staffing at the city level, because the fact that there is a shortage of law enforcement personnel in Ithaca is having an adverse impact on Ulysses taxpayers. Because what's ending up happening is just this past weekend, the Trumansburg rig, of which we only have one, was in the city 3 separate times. And part of the reason, and it's not just unique to this weekend, it was in the city 12 different times in July. It's becoming kind of a recurring issue that we're.
The rig is the EMS.
Yeah, the EMS rig, yeah, we have one. Second calls are provided by the fly car, the informal fly car.
Good.
So, basically what's happening in Ithaca is that because they're short-staffed with police, EMS, regardless of who it's our EMS or Dryden's EMS or Bangs, is showing up. I don't know if anybody else responds, but if they show up to a scene where there's any threat of potential danger, such as drug overdoses or anything that might have a potential for violence, the EMS office, the EMS personnel are not going to do anything until law enforcement is present. Because there are obviously liability issues, they're putting their own staff in jeopardy. It's just like general policy for these types of situations that you wait for law enforcement to secure the scene before you provide treatment. And what that's doing is having an adverse effect on delaying service provision. So you can actually, we're having situations, to my understanding, that they're actually ambulances sitting waiting for the police to show up to provide that emergency, safety service. And if you've got one rig at a call and another, you're ending up with a delay in service, resulting in more calls for mutual aid. It has a domino effect and it's impacting Ulysses and not just Ulysses, but our entire ambulance district. So I wanted to raise with the board, if the board would be comfortable, I would not commit the town to anything financial. I would not commit the town to, any action, but there's discussion about signing a letter that basically requests that the city of Ithaca do whatever they can in their power to provide sufficient staffing for emergency services, so that this triggering effect to our resources that are providing mutual aid does not continue as a routine basis. It used to be that Banks was coming out to us routinely. And now we've kind of shifted to the mutual aid is heading into Ithaca and we're paying for it.
Is Bangs also staffing short or?
I'm unclear on that. I can't speak to that. I know that EMS in general in the nation is struggling because it's healthcare, but it's healthcare sometimes that it's funded at some of the lowest levels. And so if someone has we've seen a lot of movement nationwide, I think, from reports I've seen, we've seen a lot of movement in ambulance force staff in general. That if you can get a better job, you leave because it's not necessarily really well job in a lot of cases. But I can tell you that I can't speak to banks in particular. I can tell you that the city of Ithaca does not provide ambulance service. They don't have a contract, to the best of my understanding. The city has just been relying on things as a private firm for a number of decades now, they provide the service. And so, which is different from how we do it, right? We're providing the service to our public through taxation, and we recoup some fees. So the city frankly, I think the city needs to step up and take responsibility for the fact that they're deficient in services and service provision for emergency services. So I did explore whether or not legally I have to ask. I mean, it's like me giving a statement to the press to some degree. It doesn't actually commit the town to anything, and I don't have to actually clear everything I say in, just in a news article, provided I'm not, going outside the bounds of what's legally allowed. But I just wanted to get a sense that the board felt comfortable with a letter like this going to the city, because obviously it would have the town of Lewis's name associated with it.
Well, I don't know. What, Mike? What, Michael?
Yeah.
Just maybe place a call to her first and see if they're aware of it.
I mean, I
Might
think
quick-
I
See
think
if
she's
she-
very aware of it because we were basically outside her door for 3 times this past weekend. That's where we were. So that's where the situation was. I mean, it's really the city, I think the idea is we're just trying to encourage the city to do everything in their power to hire. The city police department is incredibly understaffed, and now it's impacting us, which is part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, from a standpoint of Bangs in the city, if Bangs is in the city, so it's perfectly natural that the city wouldn't have their own ambulance, since there's an ambulance service in the city, and the city isn't that large square mile, area wise. So I don't see any dereliction of duty there. Obviously, they could use more police, and so I don't know how you would frame the letter.
Well, I think it's a situation where we'd be outlining kind of what's been happening in terms of the impact that this has had, and encouraging the city. The city is going through their own will be going through their own budgetary process. And encouraging the city to support increasing or to support filling the staffing positions they have. They're understaffed. It's not that they don't, it's not that they cut positions, they have to fill the position. And so filling the position in the law enforcement would really make a difference for us to reduce the amount of costs that taxpayers are paying.
Well, maybe it would be more powerful to have all the municipalities that are in our ambulance district have the village, covert, right, have whoever. If we write a letter together, then it's showing that we all believe there's a problem.
That's the
come
idea. I'm asking if you're okay with me signing on to a letter like that.
With the other municipalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with
Other,
that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking to go way off on any tangent, whatever. I would just like to, and I think it's important for, frankly, our legislative representatives to also understand that this is a real challenge and burden.
Yeah, we should have told Ann when she was here tonight. Have you
Well,
talked to Corman about it?
I have not personally had, this is something that just really transpired over the course of today, and with our budget stuff, I haven't had a chance to do it. But I know I know that the intent is to make sure that other people are aware of this too. So copying,
Okay.
Making sure people get
Yeah.
copies of the letter.
Yeah,
Okay, I
that's
just didn't
cool.
want
Yeah.
to surprise anybody or upset anybody.
and I maybe
But
related to that.
you didn't need to, but thank you.
Right, what we were talking about this morning at the budget meeting there, of potentially looking into, because in Ithaca.
Yep.
The Bangs bills, even if they go there, not, it doesn't matter if they transport,
Yeah.
is
I
your
don't know if it's-
understanding, right?
Right.
And so that might be some other way to help us recoup a little bit of that, cost to help us
I'm
like
gonna check on
move
that.
our staffing.
Yep, I'm gonna
Right.
check on that.
So
for
I
the
think,
village.
when you're talking to the municipalities about this letter and everything, it would be worth checking on that. I mean, we don't
Absolutely.
want to change the policy for within our district,
No.
but if it's mutual aid and that's causing us a problem because we only have one grade.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. And then there was the other idea
Oh,
about
yeah, fly car.
the fly
That
car
was a good one.
application. And so a couple things to
Yeah.
talk to all of that group about.
Yeah.
At least that's only Tompkins County, so maybe,
That's more.
it's
but
us
yeah.
and you and the village.
Yep. No, I will
But
absolutely.
we pay the
follow up.
lion's share of it all between the two of us anyways.
Yeah, we do.
So is the meeting this morning recorded?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And did you discuss at the meeting this morning, the EMS meeting in August?
We
I
went
mean,
over
what-
the numbers that were presented. I did, I mean, yeah, I gave them I didn't say like, this is what happened in the meeting, but what I did say was explain how the numbers developed, and that's a reflection of a summary of what was at that meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
it's just, this is the cost. new cost.
Right, right.
It's on a,
So is it?
Michelle put it together a whole bunch of documents that you can. She had them. there.
Oh, okay.
but you
Yeah,
can
I
take
don't
her
think I
down, so you
got
don't
them.
get it. But
Yeah.
just ask,
I'll-
she can email you them all, yeah.
I'll,
and if you have any questions, if you want to talk about it, I'm happy
Yeah.
to talk about why the numbers are the way they are.
Right,
Um,
basically the fire is a little lower. And
Okay.
this is like 9% higher.
And then I was just gonna let you know that, the youth commission, met last Tuesday, and did our annual recommendations, for funding. And really the only, and that's all, that gets piecemealed out into the budget as a whole. But the only real costs go to are connected to, the town board has already approved that contract, is the, community rec partnership,
uh-huh.
because there was an increase in cost on there, and that's really where we're seeing the reflection on the increase of cost. There's some cost of living adjustments essentially, but that's where we're seeing movement on price, and it's not, it looks sizable on, when you look at a budget that small, it does not look sizable when you look at our
Yeah.
budget overall. So, but I wanted to give you a heads up on that. And then, as I already said, the open meetings law will not be extended. So thank you for moving forward on that. So that's what I had to report, and yeah, with their. Oh, I'm also, the other thing is I'm talking to the people from the new director of the Cuga watershed. I forget her name, is it Aaron?
Hugo Lake Watershed.
Yes,
Oh, no,
No.
that's Cleo,
yes,
the watershed steward for the Hugo Lake
yes.
IO.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I'm talking to Aaron too about, that our ditching project was their third priority project when they were putting together their projects. And so we're looking at moving ahead in Ulysses, which is awesome. So kudos to all the people who are working on that. I was not at a meeting last week about it.
I was, yeah,
but I
so
know
I
you
can
were.
tell you more about it.
So, but yeah.
Yeah.
I've been talking to them. So that's all I have. Did you want to give that update now? That might be a good.
Oh, I could, yeah, no, I was at that meeting. It was fairly sort of free ranging and not. There was that proposal and then there was the whole of ditches in Ulysses, and actually Aaron contacted me again today to ask for some of the background on us developing that
Oh, cool.
proposal.
Great.
Because she was feeling a little confused still about how they can help
Mhm.
with regard to that project that was ranked. And so, because on that call were everybody that does ditch things, so there was, David Orr from Cornell Local Roads, there was Angel from Soil and Water, all the ditch expertise in addition to Rebecca and Scott and Michelle are on there. And so Aaron was thinking that it might be helpful to have like a smaller meeting with just Ulysses folk, like Rebecca, you, Scott, Michelle, me, if you want, just because I'm the interface with the IO and they ask me all the questions about what Ulysses is doing. So I just try to find out. Anyway, and like look at that proposal versus the bigger ditches picture and looking, because that at that meeting, they talked about a group of people going out with Scott to look for specific ditches that might make sense to include in a study. So just trying to resolve those things, that proposal with the rest of it, so she can understand how she might help.
Nice.
Would be good. So I think she'll put out another Google meeting thing, Google meeting thing. But I told her I thought that was a good idea, just because if there's less people, then it's not, everything one could do. It's how does it relate to this particular project?
Absolutely.
And so also related to ditches and every education, the Cuba Lake Watershed Network has a fairly new director, Liz Kreitinger, who was talking with Rebecca Schneider, who's the ditch expert, countywide, statewide, nationally, about a project a public education kind of project that they might collaborate on. And Rebecca had a student, I think it came a bit out of a master's student looking for a project. Anyway, what they want to do, and they've talked to Scott some about it. So they got in touch with some of the Quio people, got in touch with me because they were like, why did Ulysses change from the project they submitted to the public education project? And I was like, oh. Anyway, we found out about all that, and it's sorted out and everybody is on the right page now. But what they want to do, and they asked, I think they've been trying to get in touch with you.
I talked to
So
them
did you
today.
talk to them? Okay, so they know, they basically just want to help familiarize town residents with the local highway staff and build appreciation and awareness for the ways that they support the towns, including watershed stewardship. And so they're thinking about, and Scott's interested in it, they've talked to him and they wanted to touch base with you. And so they said, well, if you could also mention it, because I know she's busy, so I'm mentioning it to you and the board. But anyway, they're trying to develop some materials. And so one thing was maybe to put something in the newsletter. Liz was thinking Liz Kreitinger was thinking an article, and I said, well, it's a fairly short article, but if you're developing other materials too, we could potentially make a spot on our website. We could talk about different ways that, that article could link to more information or other things you're developing, link to the watershed network or whatever. So anyway, that's what's out there, and that's a sort of have people appreciate and understand what the local highway staff does with regard to ditches, water quality stewardship and all that. So that's another project that's going on. It's more education wise.
Awesome.
So yeah, so there were those two things. Other than that, I just have that we are working on getting a kickoff meeting for the Source Water Protection Plan Committee with the New York Rural Water Association technical specialist. So he turned out to have a lot more things that weren't quite finished up that he's still working on now. So he sent out a bunch of dates we put onto a doodle poll. And so we're looking at somewhere in the middle of October into the beginning of November,
respond to that,
which is right when and we might add one more, like in the first week, end of October into November, to try to get everybody together. We were hoping to have a in-person meeting for the first one, so he could meet everybody. And also part of their requirement, his requirement is that he spends some amount of time in person in the communities he's working in. But I just think for everybody to, and then, not every time after that. So we'll see when that goes. And I did get in touch with Caitlin and Carissa to see if at sometimes Carissa could come, because she knows about the water district when she has time, and then you obviously, Caitlin. So yeah, so that's ongoing. And then with the CSAC met on the 9th of September, 7th of September, and we set a first month, Wednesdays of the month, 4 p.m. We're going to stick to a regular meeting time, usually Zoom. We're going to try to have maybe quarterly in-person meetings. We have a subgroup that's trying to work on the climate smart communities recertification and the clean energy communities, because those two things have a lot of overlap. And they're also gonna have some overlap with the sustainability elements as we look through the comp plan too, so. And then we're working on a few other things of pollinator protection to bring to the board. Mary's kind of spearheading that one. And Barach just said she's interested in joining the Source Water Protection Committee, but I want to make totally sure before we appoint her. She said it, but I want her to know more of the details, so I'm sending her that. And the only one last thing I did want to mention, because I never wrote it into the questionnaire that Michelle sent out about budget, what groups might need money for the budget, but I realized in, getting this Source Water Committee going, that we really should have minutes for those meetings. And I think, because I think there's gonna be a lot of interest in it, and we're working with somebody from the Rural Water Association, so it's a bit more formal, and it's, at least my experience with the CSAC is that it's very hard to get reliable minutes from a rotation of people in the group, and it's hard to run the meeting and take the minutes. So I talked with Chris just a little bit about that, but I was thinking maybe we can incorporate it into the thinking if we have somebody that takes minutes for the planning board or something, if we could think about, enough other money that they can help take minutes for this committee. If you think it's important enough to have good minutes, because I think, it's a townwide thing that the public is going to be interested in. But anyway,
So actually.
there's a minutes issue.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, that's actually now becoming a major issue that we have to address, just because we've had some transitions. I would use the
Right.
word out of clerking positions. And so at the next board meeting, we're going to be looking at that I'm going to be bringing forward. I'm currently working with Blixie right now to do this with Michelle. We had money allocated this year to put towards administrative systems for planning and code. And there's piecemeal money together for administrative assistance that we had budgeted in the 2022 budget. And we're kind of looking at a single position, maybe up to 15 hours at an administrative assistant level. That would actually do some of these.
Like if
clerking
you have a
that would
special
collectively-
project like that, that they can help support
Right.
over that period of time, that would be fabulous.
So
I just
that's-
wanted to raise it.
And
so thank you.
I appreciate you bringing that, because it was helpful to get that need at the time that we were having that conversation,
Yeah.
because
I mean, I didn't think of it till we started organizing it, and the constant struggle to get the CSAC meeting minutes to happen. So,
Yeah.
so that's great. Thank you. That's all I have.
so look for the 27th on that one.
Okay,
So when you're ditching, it's,
not really mind itching, but
well,
Budget.
committee, some of those roads there, I think they're mostly county roads that run down,
mhm,
on the steeper slopes,
right,
because one of them comes down and washes out the Black
Right.
Diamond Trail.
right,
So that might be when it's, I could team up with the county
right,
in
yeah,
a short section.
right.
So
Yes.
if they put some sort of retention and something to slow it down. but
Yeah, that was some of the I mean, that's what the proposal was. Not specific roads, but steep slopes. Choose a few locations of steep
Yeah, but
slopes
many of
to
those
try
are
to
county
solve a
roads.
problem. And so then there's issues of whose road is it, what land is around, there's a lot of reconnaissance and thinking that has to happen. And so that's gonna be worked on,
Yeah.
but,
But anyway, that's one
Yeah.
that could use it. for sure.
Right.
I forget which one of those.
yeah, yeah, there are
runs down,
several. out
Parallels the Diamond Trail and crosses it
there. Right.
on the top of the bag and
Mhm.
it'd be written there.
No, I'm trying, yeah, I write it a lot, but I'm trying to picture it. I'm
Well,
not
you
sure.
can't miss it if you're writing it.
I'm trying to think, yeah, where it is. Anyway, I'm trying to think of the places. Anyway, so yeah, the board will be kept, apprised of that, obviously, because some funding would have to be found for that. And so that was the idea of this whole grant that the water DIO got, was to assess get projects from municipalities that they think are useful for water quality and important, and what their needs are. And then they had a whole matrix that they used to evaluate them, a whole scoring matrix. And then, they took I don't remember the top 5 or 10, and as a start towards, okay, we're really going to help try to locate resources to help municipalities get them done. And so our project is like number 3 or 4, so they're interested in sort of the next phase of that grant carrying through and helping out, so. Yeah, but that's all I know about it. I only really kind of know because I'm really in between.
Oh, awesome. So many good things happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening.
Any other board reports? Before I hop on to the minutes? Okay, let us move to the minutes. Minutes were provided for August 23rd. There was a regular meeting and a public hearing. So I'm looking at my resolution and it should say August 23rd, 2022.
And there was a special town board meeting.
Oh,
and a regular meeting.
Right.
I'm sorry. What day was that second?
August 23rd.
They were the same day,
Yeah.
right?
It was all that.
Yeah. so
Okay,
that
okay,
day.
I'm sorry. I thought you were saying in addition to that. I'm like, but I did not read anything in addition to that, and I'm getting late and I am tired. So, yes, it was the regular meeting and the public hearing. Did anybody have any alterations? To the one?
I had a couple things just to consider on the full meeting of the 23rd. One was on page 4, sort of the top of page 4. Under the discussion, it was the local law increasing the compensation for the highway superintendent. And then it says discussion. And I was wondering if we just wanted to add the other sort of major thing that was said there that maybe we want for the record, because board members seem to think it was important to make sure we noted, was that the attorney confirmed that this compensation increase is only for 2022 and does not raise the base salary of the town highway superintendent for 2023. So you could say in response to Mr. Goldman's question, because Rich asked the question and then Nate confirmed that this compensation increase is only for 2022, does not raise the base salary. I just thought maybe including that, because we talked about it a few times. And then on the bottom of page 4, when we were talking about the special event ordinance, the group discussed those two things. And I was thinking just to note where we are now. I know it's on hold, but that the board agreed that Roxanne should incorporate the items discussed into this V2 draft revision and send it on to the attorney for edits to the language. And the board also asked the attorney's office to look into possible penalty fee structures in relation to other municipalities. So I could send this if you want, similar to Ulysses, and make suggestions, because that was kind of where we next moved that to.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I can send you those if you want, Kristen.
Any other alterations? Not, I would I'd move the approval of the minutes from August 23rd, 2022 with those alterations.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I is, or, I'm sorry. Rich
You could read his lips.
is taken.
You say that.
Right, aye.
I'm sorry, I get real goofy after 9 o'clock these days, so apologies. Okay, budget modification. Does everybody hear? Rich, I'm sorry, I don't have an electronic. Let me see if I can find an electronic version of the budget modifications. I don't know if I have an electronic version.
That's all
Oh,
right.
hold on, no, I do. I'm sorry. I will forward it to you really quickly. I'm sorry. Didn't realize that Michelle had sent me one. That was my fault. I'm sending it to you right now. So the budget modifications in the A fund, this all relates to kind of an error that was made in how the budget was set up last year with all these different PF lines. Basically, these were all, people, this is all salary stuff. And it's all just being moved into the recreation DE line. To pay to, and it's gonna be corrected in the future, so you're not gonna next year. we're not gonna be doing these budget modifications. It's all gonna come out of the CE line, yeah.
We're not gonna go to 3 decimal places past
No.
the
That's
budget.
my question was-
Yeah,
No, and this is really, it's because all of these lines exist, and basically, we're getting rid of these lines. These lines aren't gonna exist in the new budget.
Just put them in a paper.
There is all, yeah,
Okay.
it should have all been put in the recreation CE line, but it wasn't, it got broken out. And so
by season.
by season, which is just a terrible way to do it,
I know.
and so,
PS fall, PS.
yeah, exactly, so it's just all gonna be condensed
PS
next
summer.
year.
sports.
So, the, number 2 modification in the A fund relates to, we were able to open up the wait list, to accommodate, more students than we originally, more kids than we originally anticipated when the budget was set up. Will was able to, so everybody who was on the wait list was brought into camp, which was something we were really excited about. But that did require moving, $2,617 from the rec CU line into summer camp line. We had budgeted for the excavator trailer, and I'm sure it's gonna surprise you that what we budgeted for was a little bit under what it actually turned out to be. So, we were moving funds in the DA fund. We originally budgeted, 17,325, and the actual cost is 19,201. So it's coming out of the machinery CU line. And then, under the FW3 fund on the second page, this relates to trainings and dues. So we're having, a couple of our highway staff members are going through the training to get their district license, their water district license, and so that's what we're paying for. There's very little flexibility, in Water District 3 in terms of finances. And so it's coming out, of this line, because we really have very little place to pull from in order to pay for their training, so not a whole lot of options. And then there was a $15 unbudgeted bank fee that we need to pay for, so. There you go.
Hey, Caitlin, just a heads up.
Yeah,
In the email you just sent me, Nancy Zaylor is still supervisor.
I know,
So
it's
this-
because it's the email that I never use. I will change that, I'm sorry. That's,
Just a-
because I don't send things from Gmail.
I know,
and
but
so I
she's,
never change stuff. But I did, yes, I will change it. I will take care of it. I'm not gonna do it during our meeting though, so, but I will
No.
get taped.
all right. All right,
Oh, I didn't.
So I just wanted to know, I'm sad the project budgeted for this line will not be occurring this year.
The, so this is relating, so this is relating to the fact we just don't have the staff capacity in the management right now. to do
Right,
it.
so as we're doing budgets,
Mhm.
Michelle's putting in a bunch of things. She's got a bunch of for the town hall and stuff.
Uh-huh,
And, one of the things is the pavement again.
uh-huh.
We still don't have an estimate for the pavement. I get the sense she spread too thin.
Oh, no, this project hasn't related to Michelle. It's related to the highway.
What
Water
project are you
supervisor.
talking about?
Water
We've got $6,000 in there. We were gonna do some stuff for Water District 3.
Oh,
Right, but that's not a
as,
Michelle
as a
issue.
precursor or some. We've got to get somebody, as we're doing projects, whoever it is. We don't have the people for it. So as we keep budgeting things, we need to make sure that what we budget for, that is things that we can actually put on our plate.
No, I
execute.
understand. Yeah. Nope, I got it.
well, but that might all shake out better with
Right.
the changes you've been trying to make with
Including-
regard to administrator and a worker and also,
Right,
training,
yeah,
so it all kind of,
right, circled in here.
yeah,
which is why we're paying for training in the previous,
right.
out of that line.
all
Okay,
right.
so is there, if any more questions it sounds like, Rich, are you moving to approve the budget modifications as presented?
Yes. So
I'll
move.
second. That. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
All right,
Aye. And then we move on to paying our bills. We had, I'll just move the resolution and we can talk about it if anybody wants to talk about anything in it. Resolved, the Ulysses Town Board has reviewed and approved payment of claims for vouchers number 381 through 432 in the amount of $168,859.81. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion, questions?
We have a question, but it's about a specific person, so
Okay,
I don't want to ask it here.
okay.
Alright.
Okay. So then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Thank you. And, then we'll move to privilege of the floor. Linda, did you want to address us on anything?
No, I don't. Good meeting, guys. A lot of material covered today. Yeah,
Always.
Thank you.
We're busy folk here.
So we.
I
don't-
know. Well, all the water and comprehensive plan stuff is
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yep, no, we do have an executive session on the
Okay.
back page.
Oh, I didn't
I'm
turn it
sorry.
on.
It goes on.
It goes on.
Oh, I didn't print the back page because it's usually just the rules.
Yeah.
You know, I adjusted the formatting so it was actually consistent because it was driving me crazy.
Yeah.
that The formatting wasn't
Right,
consistent and
okay.
making it consistent, put it on the second page.
Are we doing
So-
an executive session or not?
That's what we're just.
We are, so Rich, I had sent you the link.
I'm gonna go,
earlier.
so should I
So,
go there now?
yep, we are going to have to physically move to another space. We're gonna go to the conference room, but we're going to executive session related to collective bargaining negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law and also related to litigation. And so when we will be adjourning coming out of that meeting, we are not intending to take any action this evening. But is there a motion to go into executive session?
So.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I wish everybody